He's a great man.
Darren, I love him.
So,
Yes, okay, it's been a while
he
since
just
I talked.
took over within the last, what, 2 years?
Did he come from another church? He was there. Okay.
So, I'll give you one story. 20 years ago, I was in practice up on a racquetball court with after 10 points, he said, "You're not worth me playing." He just walked off. Bishop Joey Johnson.
Oh.
He said, and so he said, "You need to play with Jerosha Butts." And he put me in there with a woman, and she beat me.
Wow. All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
So, my name's Tom Peoples. Joined by Henry Johnson. Henry Johnson Jr. We're both juniors. So, the reality is, we're going to have to pivot. And you know, we're going to talk about civic engagement, community involvement. But I am literally standing in a room full of civic engagement and community involvement giants right now. I know people by name and by face who are doing some pretty amazing things out there. I'd say when we were asked to present, a lot of what we were going to talk about and what we built on is about how to engage in the community, specifically for probably this target audience right here. Not this audience. Not this audience. Not this audience, right? So really, I think we've got some giants in the room that we can probably have a good conversation around, right? We've got educators, we've got leaders in the community that are out there making things happen, right? And I'm honored and humbled to be in this room with this group, because I think we're all going to learn, right? We have an hour, and if you know Dr. Rice, start on time, end on time. So we got 59 minutes to do some things, to learn from each other, right? And there are some young folk, early in their career, student-type folks, can't say young anymore, who are going to learn from this room. They're going to take some things away from this room. And we've got some more veteran folks in this room that are going to help with the conversation. I'll tell you up front, and call you out, Marv, on some of the things that are already happening in the community. Because we designed this, really, to say, okay, young people, now is the time to do something, right? Because the world is going crazy. and we don't need to get into all of the details of local or national or whatever, but it's going to be young people, younger people that aren't engaged right now that are going to make the difference. Again, I'm humbled by the folks in this room because you are making it happen. I've been in a room with you, I've been at events with you, I've been shoulder to shoulder with you. And I'm talking a lot like Henry and I have been in the room with you when you're doing these amazing things. So again, I don't know, you're going to have to pivot. You're going to look at some of these slides and go, yeah, it will resonate with some, and then hopefully it will reinforce what's already happened. So.
For sure. Well, I am going to be super polite and take 1 second, step out, and I'll grab 3 chairs for our new guests, and then we'll let you.
Oh, we got it.
Never mind. Pass my capacity now.
So Henry almost just told me I was going to have to tap dance for another 5 minutes.
But no, seriously though.
Their session's canceled, so you may get more coming in.
Oh, their session canceled.
Bring it!
It's open chair right here.
They got a couple of chairs.
Mila, what were you thinking? The racial something? Yeah.
We knew where we were going.
I'm in late.
No, 15 days. I'm good. I told
throw myself in there.
Okay.
So when we were years ago, now this is what's happening.
Years ago. When
I am tickled.
White.
Am I sitting on somebody's lap or what?
There is one right over
Our
there.
conversation here.
Okay.
The premise of our session is to have an informative conversation on what civic involvement and civic engagement is. As Tom stated earlier, we're prepared to talk from a high school to early collegiate level, but now we'll just engage the conversation all the way up through experience leaders. So who we are. So I'm Henry Johnson Jr. I've been in this community for 45 years, born and raised. My family owned a grocery store in West Akron, Henry's Acme, for 14 years, and through that, I was able to be civically involved and engaged. We worked with the black firefighters. We gave away 500 turkeys at Thanksgiving to feed families, to work on food insecurities. I've worked on several projects throughout the community. I've worked with the LeBron James Family Foundation, worked with Ohio Jobs and Family Services. I've worked with AMHA through my position at Acme. I've been able to work on the SNAP program at the state level. So I've lived a full life in that lane. And in that lane, I learned how the importance of our voice and our advocacy matters. So through that, so I took that and kind of built on that and became the best that I could become in the position that I was in. And I learned that my engagement and my impact was capped by my position. So I was able about a year ago to transition over to Leadership Akron. So now I work for a nonprofit that inspires and empowers leaders, and that's right up my wheelhouse and in my passion. I get to wake up every day and work in the community and help the community and find out about all of the amazing resources throughout Summit County, and I'm able to share those through collaboration with my friends, my partners, and this room is going to be a safe space and a safe conversation, so you'll hear me use the word village a lot. So through the village that supports me, I'm able to help grow and be a part and a functioning member of the village. Now, when I say village, I mean the community that encompasses, and especially the Black, Brown, and Beyond village that needs to be had. Because there are many times we're in these rooms, especially when you're talking civically and engagement, that we're the only one in the room, or there are very few of us in the room. So if you're not a part of that village, you don't have a village to rely on, it's going to be a tough room to be in. So I'll share a little bit more throughout our conversations. I'll pass it over to Tom.
Sure. So my name is Tom Peoples. I currently work at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. I've been with the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company for 24 and a half years in varying roles, technical roles, and leadership roles. Prior to coming to Goodyear, I was a surface warfare officer in the United States Navy. I'm not an Akronite, I'm not from here. I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I came here for the work. Over the course of my time, I'd say I sort of discovered civic engagement, community involvement a little bit later. I'll tell you exactly what changed my life. I went to an NAACP banquet in San Angelo, Texas. I was a table filler at the table for Goodyear, and the speaker that spoke was a black astronaut. And when he told his story, I said, okay, this is time for me to start giving back in a way that I'd never given back before. From there, San Angelo NAACP, ended up being the vice president of that union. Was on the YMCA board, was on the Chamber of Commerce board, I was on the Civic Events board. So in San Angelo, tiny little town, I just started getting involved. With Goodyear, moved around to a couple of different places, but always stayed with the NAACP. So right now, like Henry, we're both we're on the executive board of the Akron branch of the NAACP. I also volunteer and contribute with the 100 Black Men of Akron. I'm also on the board of directors, the actual board secretary of Project Grad Akron. If you're not familiar with Project Grad Akron, Charles, it's an organization that supports young folks on their way to graduating and on to whatever's next, right? Whether that's college or a good job, with fair wages or the military. So what I have found is that my lane is helping, we're in a safe space, young black men focus on what's next for them. Because there are so many conversations that need to be had where some young man, this young man from Walsh Jesuit, needs to see me and hear me talk about the fact that your future is what you want it to be. You can do anything you want to do. You can. There's nothing, there are going to be challenges, but there's nothing you can't do. And I need to be in the room talking to you and you and you and you and you and making sure you understand the future is what you make it, right? You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to put in the time. And it's going to be hard. It's hard for us. There's no gray area, but you can do it. You got to decide you want it. You got to decide what you want to do. I'm pointing at you. You got to decide what you want to do. Because we had a conversation earlier. I know it's rude to point. But young Mr. Johnson and I had a conversation earlier today about deciding what he wants to do. And he's got a bright future ahead of him. He's got a lot of good ideas. You need an accountability partner that's going to help you do that. Right? So that's who I am. That's what I'm about. That's the space I live in. Yeah. So I'm going to keep going. So our agenda today was really to talk about civic engagement, civic involvement, community engagement. There's some nuanced differences, right? People sort of tie them together, and it's not wrong to, but there's some things that we probably want to maybe differentiate a little bit. And then when we start talking about people that look like Henry and I, why aren't we in the room, right? Why aren't we at the board? Why aren't we on the board of directors? And then we got some examples, right? So this is clearly where, and this could be inspirational for our more veteran folks as well. Like there are some young people out there doing some pretty amazing things. We talk about changing the world in a way that, when I was these kids' age, right, the internet didn't exist. Like it wasn't a thing. Like it wasn't a thing. So again, there's some things there, some local stuff, and then really, there's no good meeting. Let me rephrase that. It's always good to have a call to action when you've done something. I won't say there's no good meeting, but a good meeting often has a call to action to do something. So have to excuse the graphic. The animation didn't work right. So who is this woman?
Say it.
Say it.
She started the NAACP.
So go to the next one. Yeah. So Mary White Ovington, right? So when we start talking about civic engagement and civic involvement, that's Mary Ovington White. Mary White Ovington.
So who is this man? Say it.
W. Boys.
Thank you.
But does everybody know who this is? I should be getting some vigorous nodding.
So what do we know about W.E.B. Du Bois? You can just shout it out. What do you know about him?
Alpha man, first graduate, Harvard University.
There we go.
One of the members, along with First Lady, to start the NAACP because of the issue. Y'all know I know this.
Well,
We know you know. And that's the conversation. It's okay, right? So Ms. Monroe is absolutely right. So we talk about the original founders of the NAACP, right? And we just highlighted, Mary White Ovington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and there were some other people, right? So the purpose of this slide is to also articulate, hey, your civic engagement, civic involvement is about finding something that you feel passionate about. Often it's about doing the right thing, right? Because there's a lot of civic engagement where people are doing some pretty messed up stuff. but there's a diverse group of people that really were the founding members of the NAACP.
So what is the NAACP? So the NAACP was started as the Niagara Movement, which formed in 1909 to become the NAACP for the advancement of colored people. And the beginning formulation started with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which is the reason why the NAACP was created, if you don't know that. Does anybody know what any of those amendments are?
Okay, Barney, you can't answer. You teach this class.
Go ahead, Marty,
I
what's
thought
the
one
third?
was for a right for women to
Go
vote,
ahead.
right? Isn't one of them a right for women to vote? Am I wrong?
No.
I think the 13th Amendment like abolished like slavery.
Yes. Anybody know the 14th?
I'm gonna give Marty a chance.
If not, Marty was waiting to answer.
When it right to vote?
14.
15.
15.
15th.
14.
14th was, was that the equal rights? Equal protection under the law.
Okay.
Yes. So let's kind of pause right here on the moment for this slide, since we have a lot more senior people in this room.
So I'm gonna jump in here. So what was the Niagara movement? And why was it the Niagara movement?
Not Tammy.
Guesses. Guess.
So think about the time, but
It's community activists and social welfare reformers pushing agenda for black empowerment, and they were aware of the residual effects of racism and the rising of Jim Crow, particularly after the Dred Scott decision.
So why Niagara?
Freedom.
Freedoms adjacent to Canada and the Canadian border.
Black people and white people, it was illegal to meet in the United States. So they had to go to Canada. And they ended up in Niagara Falls. That's how that, I mean, very different times. But are they? All right, so we're gonna talk about, and really we're gonna focus on really two words when we talk about civic engagement and then community engagement involvement. So I'll give you kind of a brief definition, and again, this is keying in on the civic piece, right? Civic engagement is the participation by an individual or a group, right, in addressing issues of public concern, right? When we start talking about communities working together or individuals working together, both in political and non-political parties, right? So you often have civically minded groups that are very specifically politically involved. Like the League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, but they are very democratic. And my wife will kill me, she's on the state board of League of Women Voters, and they're nonpartisan, but they behave very democratically, right? And it's really about protecting the public values and to make a change in the community.
so before we read the definition, when you think of community engagement, what do you think of?
Community engagement is being involved, getting involved with activist action or a movement, is how I look at it. Public participation, I'm drawing a blank on mine here, but yeah, you kind of know where I'm trying to go with it.
I also think about supporting where you live, being active.
The other Mr. Johnson?
Serving the community's needs.
Anybody else have a definition? But for the young folks, what is community to you?
I say where you live.
Trust.
Trust,
The support system.
support system, common interest.
All correct. And very accurate.
And we often create commissions to implement.
Yes.
You know, we have giants in the
Yes.
I will acknowledge that over and over and over.
So basically, community engagement holds the promise that public participation can influence decisions. So that is the premise. So what is traditionally similar about engagement and involvement?
Or community and civic. Anybody?
What makes them similar?
I'm thinking about it, yeah. Yeah.
Not a trick question.
No, no. What makes them similar is just, yeah, being able to engage, submit yourself and your views, I should say, upon, the community as a whole. But being involved really is what's similar. It's what the way you're being involved with community engaged, whether you're activist or whatever, yeah, just being involved.
A lot of times it's people getting together,
Yeah.
right? And around something. I'm not gonna make fun of the group that I always make fun of, because there might be a board member in here. But there are groups that are in the community, right, that are involved in specific community kinds of things, whether it's the metro parks or something that's really about uplifting the community, or it could be aesthetic, right?
Can I make an observation that at the broader, larger scale, community engagement really involves partnerships with entities and the communities that they reside in, and it needs to be a relationship that's reciprocal. That means that if Goodyear or if Acme is in a community, that there is a commitment to do outreach and connect and meet the needs of that community and establish relationships with folks who surround those areas. Does that make sense?
Community conversations and collaboration.
I also want to say what makes up that community or that unity, and what makes up the community, and it's businesses, it's people, it's schools, it's families, and then when issues come right, they come together to resolve any issues or concerns together to ensure that there is a coherence of thriving in that, in their system of that community. So you gotta look at what makes up that community, or a community.
But usually it's targeted too. You have a specific target that you're trying to reach. And I think that's the most important as traditionally Summit about.
And you have the broader community, as in Summit County. You have 31 jurisdictions within Summit County, which are communities. And you have neighborhoods, which make up those jurisdictions. So community can be a broad spectrum of focus.
University of Akron campus, LGBTQA+, it could be black, it could be, the community is really defined by a lot of different things.
So what makes these things different?
Not a trick question. It's not.
You're saying,
that the organized community sort of fight for their own and forget that they're part of a larger community. Yes.
so when you're talking about community engagement though, what's different now than in the 1900s?
No, like between kind of civic involvement and community engagement.
It's awareness creation and focusing on disparities.
It's definitely more the civic side.
Yes. So how many people feel like they focus on the community side? You show of hands. This is more civic room. How many focus on the civic side? How many focus right in the middle then?
That's good. Need a balance.
Yeah.
Because we need to uplift the communities, and we need to fight some of the systemic problems that exist out there, right? We need to identify them and then hit them head on. So there's plenty of space for both.
Yes. There's a need for both.
There's way too much space for both.
So when you think about this slide here, if you kind of look at it, I know it's busy, but especially for young people, these are ways to get involved. So there's political involvement, there's social responsibility, there's community research, there's association involvement, there's advocacy and education, there's philanthropic giving, and there's direct service. So let's kind of, in our lane of community, let's kind of dive into the philanthropic giving side of it. So what does philanthropic mean to you?
And we got some philanthropic giants in the back. Thank you for what you do, and we appreciate it. All the little people enjoy those checks.
Investing in betterment or good of someone else.
You have the young people, or younger people, I should say.
Earlier career.
I was gonna say like, maybe provide scholarships for like your community.
Yes,
Scholarships.
absolutely.
So philanthropic can be giving of your time, your talents, or your treasures.
Or ties, says Karen.
Yeah. So to break that down, that means we all have resources, and depending on where we are in our career and our lives, we either can give time, we can give the talents we've learned in our careers, we can give our ties, which are our connections, we can give our talents, which is what we learn, and our treasures is our money.
Or other people's money.
Or other people's money. That's always a good way to give. So when you think of advocacy, what do you think of? This is kind of like the importance of your voice in the room. So either you're in the room advocating for something, or you're meeting with your friends to advocate for something to take to the room. So, for example, what's something in school that you want to advocate for? What's something, right now, if you could make a change, what would it be? Anything. It could be the pizza at lunch.
I would probably say implementing a way to give students a voice.
Okay, so now, as a room, now we're in a community now. We've created a community around you. So how will we do that? How will we create a voice in the schools for this young man and his peers to have a voice?
Creating positions for like students to kind of like move up and kind of gain those leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, adults, how are we going to help them?
Mentor.
What are we going to, because we have the power to do it. We are adults. We are leaders in these different organizations. What are we going to do to help them? Sir?
I think we use our social and political capital. You know, one of the ways, and I remember serving on the United Way board, and there was always the meetings before the meeting. And, you know, it's kind of like, say, well, I was just wondering, you know, we would like to get this student trustee, you know, how would you vote on something like that, right? And then these people get tally those votes. So when we came to the meeting, I already knew what the decision was going to be. And so that's using your social and political capital.
It's even easier than that. In the next meeting, hey, I have a topic that I'd like to share with the rest of the room. You know, just 5 minutes to get this out there. Somebody came to me and said, hey, there's this issue that they have, and we, who are already at the table, you know, we then become the advocate for their advocacy. It's that simple. Making an agenda item in the meeting. And we are all in meetings, and we can all make that one little suggestion that, hey, maybe this ought to be something that the broader organization takes a look at.
Use your ties, if you have connections to teachers, school board, principals, in the school aspect.
Yeah.
Direct services, you know, we have United Way in the room, they're a big proponent of direct services. You have Goodyear. You have Akron Community Foundation in the back there. Not to pick on some organizations.
But they're different. They are living this life.
I don't want to leave out FedEx, University of Akron.
So this is so who's a psychology major? All right, so you're going to be bored. But I think this is a tremendous chart. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It explains a lot of things and a lot of the behaviors in our community. Now, it's an old chart, right? But I think a lot of the tenets are still very prevalent, right? So one of the questions that we're asking is, why don't we? Why wasn't it until I was in my 30s that I really started getting involved in the community organizations and things like that?
A lot of people are afraid.
But even just community stuff that, you know, the Civic Events Board, planning the rodeo.
You hadn't filled the earlier, or the lower levels of need.
Chief, you're right, right? So when we start talking about especially marginalized communities, communities of color, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically says, you can't go to the next level until you've satisfied the level below. That's the premise of this chart, right? And so we all have to satisfy our physiological needs, right? Can we breathe? You know, if you're underwater, your only priority, literally, if you're in the bottom of the pool, the only thing you're thinking about is getting your head above the water. You're not worried about what you're going to eat. You're not worried about what's going to be on TV. You want, or if you're choking, you want to clear that airway. That's the only thing you're thinking. Homage to my firefighters that are saving people's lives. Right? But if you need to clear that airway, That's the only thing you're thinking about, right? So that's these physiological needs, right? And when we start talking about people that are experiencing homelessness, right? They are struggling day to day. Am I gonna sleep someplace? Do I have the clothing on my back? And do I have a place to sleep outside the snow? They are not thinking about anything else, right? And one could argue that people that are suffering from addiction are in this place as well. Maslow didn't really talk about that, but that's also part of our community. Where am I gonna get my next fix is here. Once you've satisfied your needs, right? You've got a house, you've got a job, you know, meals are regular, then you can start talking about, okay, how am I, let me step back, I got ahead of myself. Once you are not hungry and not homeless, experiencing homelessness. My wife, if you don't know her, Cynthia Peoples, Honesty for Education in Ohio, she teaches me a lot about my language, words, and so people that are experiencing homelessness, right, they're here. And then you get a job, right? Now it's like, okay, I got a regular address. Now I got a place to stay. Now I can kind of take a breath. Now I can actually go see the doctor and get that checkup and maybe work on this high blood pressure that they say I have. And then once you get through your safety needs, then you can really start talking about this loving and belonging, right? That's when you can start developing this relationship with the community. Because right now, until you're there, you're surviving, right? So this is why we don't. So many of us never get past safety needs. And Maslow set it up 200 years ago, 18, whatever. Right? My psychology people don't check this. Right? We as people in communities, it's difficult to get here. Because what will also happen is we get drawn back to here, right? We lose our job. We automatically come back to here. Something happens in the community. You know, the landlord sells the house, now rent's going up, right? Now we come back here. And it's really not until you can get up here, which many of the folks in the room are, and some are up here in the blue, it's not really until we can get up here that we can truly start giving our time. Right? We're not worried about the next meal. Our treasure, we can write a personal check. We can reach in the pocket, give somebody a couple of dollars, because we're not worried about it, right? You know, and we have, at this point, established some wisdom. We've established ourselves in the community. I keep saying it, there's some community giants in this room. That's kind of intimidating. But, you know, and they can live up here. Because all of this, they're not worried about this. So what I'm offering or suggesting is a lot of the reason why folks that look like me and Henry and some of the other folks in this room aren't really living in this place where we're giving our time, talent, and treasure, because we're worried about the next meal, right? We're worried about next semester. We're worried about, will these shoes that I'm wearing, are they gonna last through the winter, right? So that's kind of my psychology lesson, something to maybe think about, especially if you're interacting with other people, and maybe thinking about in yourself, where, you can look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where do you fall in here, right? So Maslow basically says once we get to self-actualization, that's when we are basically at a point in our lives where we can just sort of freely give back. You're not really worried about a lot of things. You know, you're not living in this, you know, nirvana or anything, but you're in a place where the things that you like to do, where you enrich communities and get involved, it's much easier to do that. Questions about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I think that this is a very powerful tool, and not just in philanthropic giving. Because if you don't have any money, there's no way you're going to be writing checks. I mean, we talk about at the NAACP, $25 a year membership, right? And we got folks who are like, I don't know if I can make that payment. $25 a year, right? That's a real thing. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to suggest that in addition to those needs, there's also the need to have understanding and education of and the ability to participate in our community. Those opportunities are normally held within a very small group.
So thank you. We didn't practice that.
You're welcome.
But we talked about who doesn't, right? Like who does? Like who are the people that are active? Right? Who are those folks? I tell you, so there's an organization, SWAG, I don't know if anybody else, Students with a Goal, great organization, but that whole board was white, right? And serving young black men and women, little kids, right? So who has the opportunity, and they're doing good work. I volunteer, I wouldn't volunteer my time with them if I didn't think they were a great organization. But who's doing that work? Who's giving their time? Who's giving their talent? Who's giving their treasure? People that are aware and have this kind of flexibility. And again, I am not berating or chiding anyone. If you are in this room, and I know there are a lot of people that are doing it, I'm going to keep reinforcing it. Thank you. Thank you for what you are doing, because you are making a difference. I mean, I'm just looking at faces of people that are making things happen. And it's like I'm getting all welled up inside. Yes, sir.
Well, I just couldn't help to contextualize the conversation that we're having right now and what you alluded to earlier, and the work of the sister here at Akron. So when we think about belonging and inclusion and acceptance and things like that, right? But their sense of safety, psychological safety, and things like that, and being accepted is being whittled away. And I think about, I'm from Illinois State University, and a lot of our students come from the south side of Chicago. So you come from a predominantly black community in an urban area to a rural area as it is that is predominantly white, and the norms, values, and ways of being are shifted immediately.
Language.
Right? So while I'm trying to make this mental transition, you're talking about you have a test in 2 weeks, right? And so I think that's important, like you say, shifting, and it just really hit me as we were having this conversation that, when we start talking about, the attrition rates of men of color and students of color and first generation and all this kind of other things, but we don't really acknowledge that as institutions, what have we done to address those safety needs, the psychological needs, as opposed to creating wonderful offices and work, but then putting unrealistic responsibilities on this system. And that's what I used to tell them, the work that I did in a similar role. I didn't recruit these students, right? Admissions did. I didn't offer them housing. Housing did, right? I didn't offer them financial aid. So why are you just coming to this office to secure all of those? Yes, she has a role, but so do you folks who got these students here in the first place. And then also, how are we tapping into NAACP in the community and the churches and the folks who would be willing to love and support these students so that they don't have to feel so alienated in this institution? And how are we as institutions making those connections? So my head is just all over the place, and I appreciate that.
So I'm gonna lean in here, right? So I went to a predominantly white institution, right? I went to Rochester Institute of Technology in South Henrietta, New York, as white as it comes. Right? Not a bad, I'm not saying that, it's what it is, right? But there were students that came in there and like, what have I gotten myself into? I am lost. I don't, and it's in the middle of, it's in the woods. And there were a lot of people, you talk about that's coming back second year, just like, nah, I'm good. I was up there in the woods. Those people don't know me. They talk funny. Some of them don't really even want me up there. So that is very real, and that is absolutely around safety, and the psychological, physiological needs, psychological needs, and true safety, right? And again, kind of leaning in, right? Not going to get political, but it's clear that there's legislation out there that is actively trying to scare people, right? And then not only are they actively trying to scare people, they are doing things that are really messed up. I almost used a different word, but I'm being filmed, so I want to be careful about my language. But so when we start talking about students, we start talking about people, we start talking about anybody, right? This fits, right? And as we're moving forward in our lives, trying to make communities better, we got to understand where people are at, right? And Ms. Morale, I'll get to you in a second. It was like, if we want people to come to NAACP and go out and march for Jalen Walker, their job might be at risk if they get caught in What if their employer's like, we saw you on TV? You know, so there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into why we can't and why we don't. And then, you know, as we transition up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it's like, you know what? Put me on. I'll be on camera. I'll do the interview, right? And be that. If that happens, then I'll deal with it because I'm not really worried about this other stuff. Right? Because I'm gonna get a check. Yeah, I might have some savings that I can live off of, right? We as, you know, I was talking to my young man over here who's gonna be a financial analyst and a teacher, because that's what he told me. He's gonna be a financial analyst and a teacher by 2033. That's the conversation we had. Accountability partners, right? We need to amass some wealth, right, such that you can be up here, right? You gotta get past here, so you can be up here. Yes, sir.
So the gentleman asked a really good question as to the adversities that young kids are going to be facing, like you and every young kid in this room. So you went to Rochester Institute of Technology.
I did.
You were faced with those challenges.
Absolutely. Blatant racism at times.
What were the tools you used to overcome those things? As to how?
Brother Leon, you set me up.
Because I mean, they need to know that information because they're confronted with it. Because when they're confronted with it, they're like, okay, it's easy to say I'm giving up. But what is going to get that next step to push through that? Or what advice we can give them to help that other person in that community to get over that hump or those challenges or obstacles?
You're actually answering the question in the question. So the first thing we talked about was the community. Who is your community? And your community isn't just the people that are like you. Your community are people that are going to be there to support you. Right? Your community are going to be the people that are going to be there to help you and lift you up. If you don't actively have those people in your life right now, you need to leave here and go recruit. Like, that'll be a call to action. So you need to find your community. And my community at RIT was not black. It wasn't. I was an athlete. So my community was actually other athletes. Right? So I was able to bond with these other people that had this common goal, and we wanted to win track meets. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. That's what we were. That's how we bonded, right? And of course there were situations, and I had some good coaches. That's another thing. Mentors and coaches out there we're talking about young people and what they need to get through some of this adversity. It's fun. You got to find a community though. We all have it. Some of them just aren't good communities. I mean, if you're around people that aren't pushing you, you need new people. Mm-hmm. Like that, it's really that simple, right? If you're pulling people along, I mean, because it's hard. There's no gray area. It's hard, and it's not getting easier. So developing a sense of community is one way, and then finding some people that you can trust, right? Regardless of what they look like. Finding some people that you can trust to have some conversations with that are going to be positive, right? Because there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to help, going to tell you that you can't do it, and why you should go, and why this place ain't for you, and why it's messed up, and why you ain't this, and why you ain't that. You got to cut them off. Got to cut them off. And it's hard, because it could be family. It could be somebody you've known your entire life. And it's hard. You might have to be like, hey, we're just not on the same place. We're not going in the same place. And we're not in the same place now. We're not going to the same. We are not on the same path. So tools, finding your community, right? Finding and intentionally getting some people in your life that are going to support you, and you support them. Right? It's two-way. Like, you just can't take. You got to give. And that's what this community involvement, community engagement stuff is as well. There's beauty in giving. There's a sense of accomplishment in giving. And once you start giving, it becomes infectious. You start realizing this is helping people. This is making other people's lives better. And in the process, making your community and yourself better. Some of the most important leadership lessons I've learned was in community and civic engagement. Because influential management, they don't work for me, but I gotta get them to do stuff. Anything else? 'Cause this is good. I mean,
I do want to say, when we talk about our community, and you guys know I work with the youth all the time, so one of the things I talk about is this type of thing, but they need to understand why, and if they are not getting those basic needs met, they can't understand why they need to connect to the community and do the things in the community, why they need to give back to the, to the community. So some of the things is they need that community support so they can have food, shelter, clothing. Because some of them come and they get angry and hungry, they come and so they can't focus to get to that next level. So meeting those needs in our community is very important. I talk to the students all the time, and I try to I want to share with them why they need to get involved and give them their why.
so how could you expect a student to study when you're hungry?
Right.
Anybody who doesn't believe food insecurity is not a real thing, you probably need to exit now, because I get mad at you. I mean, there are people that we see, there's somebody in this room right now that's not so clear on what they're gonna eat tonight. That's real, right? And there's no way to have that kid pass that AP calculus class, right? If his stomach is grumbling, or when he or she goes home and knows they're not gonna eat, right? There's nobody gonna study for that. I'm hungry. So Ms. Moreau, you're absolutely on point there.
So that goes back to that village. If you think of a village, you have elders, and everybody in the village who's tribesmen has a role. So back to your point, so when they get on campus, we need people to embrace them. We need people to give them the resources in the community, because your community probably has the resources around the community to provide some of the things they're lacking in, even if it's mentorship for people who look like them. But how do they get those resources? If you're sitting there on campus, 400 miles from home, you're already struggling, and now you have no way to find out what's available to you.
And I do want to say, there was a young man that, I think, that came to Akron U, and he was doing well, and he left, and I said, why did you leave? He said, he needed a tutor, he didn't know what to do. And I was like so, angry. I'm like, okay, this is what you need to do. Reach out, because you need to get back in school. And so he came, he didn't know, he wasn't connected, and so.
Sir.
I hate to absorb the airtime, but I really appreciate what you said, because one of the things that, we were talking on the way here is, I had to learn as a young man who came up from public housing and food stamps and all of that, and had to do it on my own. I had to learn how to ask for help, right? So I had to learn how, so even if I knew where the resources were, how do I humble myself? Because this westernized notion of masculinity is I can do it on my own. I'm independent. I got out of the hood. I got out of the barrio. I got out of the trailer park. I got out of the res. And I'm here, so I can just do it. How do we cultivate community in such a way that, yes, you can, but you don't have to? That, I think, is the thing. And the other thing, I wanted to go back to your question, is the self-efficacy, right? We have to start asking our young people when they talk to us about problems, whether in the community or on a campus, do you think you can do it? Because if you don't think you can do it, and we're talking about with the proper supports and everything else, do you think you can do it? Because if you don't think you can do it, you never will. But how can we support and build you up so that you think you can do it and know that we got your back and that you will do it, because we'll do it together?
I think when people feel like you come alongside them, I think sometimes the mentorship seems like us and them. It's developing that relationship of coming alongside.
Yep.
So what I'm about to say is really selfish and self-serving. I would like to talk more about civic engagement, because there are laws going through our Senate and House that their intent is to eliminate offices and programs geared towards helping our students. And this is very, very real. And there is great concern. They don't even want you to identify if a student is African American, Latino, whatever. They don't even want you to do that anymore because they don't want anything targeted to is considered preferential treatment if we are working towards doing that kind of support that we want to offer for students. So when I say the selfishness is that the civic engagement comes into action where you need to educate yourself and know that these things are occurring and exercising your right to be heard, that you're not going to accept this type of legislation that's going through, and realize that your vote matters and it counts. Because when you don't speak, that's what they're looking for you to do. Nothing. They don't want to hear you say anything. They don't want to have you get involved. So, you know, I was trying to be quiet back here. I really was. But I just like, you guys need to know, because all the things that you're describing that we need to create as a community, they are trying to dismantle as we speak.
Dr. Crawford.
I'm sorry.
So, no. So we're gonna, again, I know.
Senate Bill 83, House Bill 33. Look it up.
We're gonna come back.
I'm sorry.
Because Dr. Rice,
Yes.
we're out of time and out of time. So we got about 12 minutes. So there's a couple of slides that we're gonna go through really quickly. And then we're gonna come back to this. Because if we're talking about civic engagement, civic involvement, you are absolutely correct. Does anybody know what just happened in the State House budget that was just submitted yesterday?
They don't know.
Yeah.
So in the State House budget, the budget that was signed for the state, it was elimination of any funding by the state to teach DEI, unbiased training, unconscious bias.
Right. Any type of DEI
Because the
training.
bills got stalled. So they wrote it out of the budget. That happened yesterday. So we're gonna come back to that.
My nerves are shot.
It's serious. It's serious.
It's very serious.
A lot of departments and a lot of
So one of the things that we wanted to do was a call to action for the young folks, right? So this is an image of the 11 young activists that are actively changing the world. They look like you. They are doing it. This young lady, Madison Crenshaw, Buckhead for Black Lives, kind of like Black Lives Matter, but really the key, and I was talking about this, you know, 10,000 followers, right? She's making stuff happen. 10,000 followers, and then she's putting a message out, and I got Instagram like 6 months ago. Like, there are things that you can do. If there's something that you're passionate about, you can influence this. And on the stage earlier in the plenary, there was this. So I'll give you a copy of the presentation. You don't have to worry about it. You can make this happen. This is a local
group in North Hill that is very active. They're operating under Asia Inc., which is a nonprofit. But they follow you from 13 to 21, and they're actually the people we met with to get this slide together actually attend the University of Akron. So they come alongside you through the process, and the nonprofit comes alongside making sure you have the resources you need through elementary, middle school, and high school. And then they follow you into college.
So anybody know Ebony? So Ebony is a giant in this space, right? So Ebony graduated from here, mechanical engineering, and is now killing it in the community. She's raised her hand, she's the front, she's the head of the line, she is out there fighting the fight. We could have probably spent a whole hour on what this young lady is doing. If you don't know that name, take a picture of it. We'll be voting for her one day.
Yeah.
Honestly. So Ebony is we're going to talk a little bit about Ebony. And then, so what now, right? So we talked about advocacy, we talked about engagement, but it's now action. There's a call to action. Do something. You got to do something, right? We're going to come back to you, Dr. But the purpose of this is now it's time to do something, right? So came up, vote. If you are not registered to vote, I am very upset. Everybody in this room is not voting. If you are not registered to vote, I'm not going to use any foul language. But do that, right? And then not only register, but then vote. And get involved, start the conversation, we talk about the volunteering your time. It doesn't have to be like 40 hours a week, it could be an hour a week, right? Like any of the folks in this room, if you're a high school kid, you can mentor a middle school kid. If you're in college, you can mentor a high school kid. Right? You can get involved. Subscribe and follow these people that are doing things, right? So here's another piece, right? So in order to be a good advocate, you gotta understand what they are doing. And understand why they. And I'm saying they because it's very adversarial, right? What are they doing and why, right? Because that'll help you understand the strategy.
And just on the side note on that one, understand. You don't have to agree, but you at least have to understand.
Yes.
And then you start talking about, okay, know who your community is, know what the community is that you live in. Because not everybody in the community you live in may not like you. That's right. And then get involved and get other people to vote, and then obviously get the movement going. So for the young folk, get your phone out. Get this QR code out right now. It's not a debate. It's an order. I was in the Navy. Get your phone out. If you are under 25, get your phone out.
Nieces, nephews, get your phone out.
This was the topic that the person didn't show.
That's why I kept telling them I couldn't.
This was the topic of, that you brought up.
So she basically just called.
Yeah. So you should have been over there, or teaching it, and you were supposed to do it. I know, but you couldn't.
We checked.
You should have been like, hey, can anyone teach us?
They told me.
So there's two things we've got to do. So in the last minute, there's going to be another QR code for the evaluation. But we're going to talk a couple of minutes about what Dr. Crawford brought up tonight. So if you don't, so my name is Tom Peoples. My wife is Cynthia Peoples. Cynthia Peoples is very vocal about a lot of these bills that are out there. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, there's an organization called Honesty for Education of Ohio. Google it, right? She was up this morning at 6 a.m. sending out emails about this amendment that's going into the budget. And so Honesty for shameless plug. But this organization, it came about because of two House bills that stalled in the Senate last year on the bad CRT. Everybody remembers it, CRT, and how horrible it was, and we can't teach kindergartners CRT, and if you ask somebody who was fighting CRT, you ask them what it was, and they wouldn't even be able to tell you what it was, let alone explain to you what the tenets are. Again, I'm getting political, and I apologize. Even if they would. This is a big deal. And the higher educators, they are threatening teachers, they are threatening tenure, they are threatening the universities, they are telling them, we are going to pull all of your funding if a student or a parent thinks you are, if a student or a parent thinks you're talking about some of these issues. There are states, and if you're from Florida, I'm sorry, but they are trying to erase black history in the United States actively. Rosa Parks' issue was not a race issue, is what the approved textbooks are moving to. And it's illegal to teach it otherwise. There are some government institutions out there dismantling education, moving us back. The state, but now, the cops, I see fire. Nobody so painted. Right, but so one of these bills that was introduced last year that stalled made it illegal for police departments to teach unconscious bias. Hear me now. This bill made it illegal for police departments to teach unconscious bias. So now what do you open the door for? When I get pulled over, and this happened 3 months ago, I could see my house when I got pulled over. I live in a neighborhood where I didn't belong. And the officer said to me, do you know why I pulled you over? No. Well, you know, it's dusk and your headlights aren't on. Okay. I said, I live right there. He said, well, I had no idea. I had no idea that you live there. Like, what does that matter? like it's still light out, but it was for my safety, right? So I'm gonna relax a little bit. Honesty for education in Ohio, right? Christina, we love you. We love what you do with us, and this, my wife is working on. But the information is there, at least in Ohio, and really. A lot of these bills that are coming to Ohio are copycat bills that are coming from Texas, they're coming from Florida, they're coming from these other states, and there are some super PACs that are creating these bills, and these legislators are writing these bills and sending them off, and if you challenge some of the lawmakers and you ask them, did you read the bill? The answer is no. So again, Honesty for Education in Ohio is a place to get informed about a lot of this stuff. And I can tell you, all right, so this is the course survey. Please, everybody, whether you're over 25 or under 25, please fill out the survey if you need to get closer. Yeah.
Let's give them a round of applause. And I enjoyed that I was assigned here with you guys, but please, fill out the evaluation. That's important to us. We use this with our higher-ups as far as the value of even having this, and we think that this is valuable. We want to continue to do so. So your feedback is important. So every session today, you will get a card or you'll see this on the board. Please fill out and give your feedback. That is part of your exercising your civic duty to be heard and take action. So we would thank you in advance for doing that. And on the way to lunch next.
Yeah, so thank you for your time and your attention. Again, we had to pivot because again, one more time I will say there's some giants in the room that are doing some amazing things in the community, and let's give them another round of applause.
If you need a card, get a card for me on your way out, please. We're on our way to eat.
Get it in.
Yeah, that was right. I know, I wrote those down. Instead of go 83, no, it's still 30. Time to go open them up a little bit.
There's some in there.
Everybody's got to agree with it. Our job to give employees to take rights away or to enforce your will. That's not when you go and vote to understand what you're voting for. That's not just to skip it or to check something because you think you know a little bit about it. That's why you wrote the stuff down. That's why it says that. But you know what I learned today? This is, I was thinking this fact. Another NFC, he was founded by a white woman. That's cool. I took a picture of that one. That's cool. I had no idea. Never asked the why. It's like, never asked the why. Or who. Man. History.
And I went to Ohio State, and then our youngest brother.
It's not meant to be forgotten, but if you don't write the path of history, you're going to revise it and make it to where it makes sense to you, and there was nothing evil or sinister about it.
They say things can't be taught.
Well, they want to remove, but they want to remove critical thinking.
They grew up in environments like a Civic. I can't. Right now, I'm in Louisville, and in Louisville, 5,500 people live there, under 25 right? But it's just, then with the Ohio State, and it's just, I just been so used to most of all my teachers have been white, but I'm saying, and so that I would know black families, but I'm saying weird. I'm used to being like growing up like 5% African American. So and even now, like not in every 10 people, I'm white people, and so there's a lot of white people, and so I just naturally, I work for like times. I work for Residential Room, I work for United Way, because I'm used to being like a black guy in the room. But I'm just saying, for me, it's just been, and so when I meet individuals who they have just the opposite impact, they never saw black people. That grew up in Kansas. Saying at the time was still, practically every place you go. I mean, you do see black people, but you see, you speak and that kind of stuff. But it's just
Teresa, one of the top people.
I will tell her.
No, I I've gone to this church before, and when they had an event. Right.
So I'm gonna. So your registration. 2033. Called you out.
I know from okay.
The guy who.
Right. My daughter.
But it was really well done. Okay.
I haven't since